And that's when we realized clients started to act differently in the way they bought. They did not buy single boxes anymore or single software products and evaluating them against competition. They said, listen, I have a problem here. This is my problem. Solve my problem. So this was not a, it was not an invention from us. And by the way, to come back to Gerstner, when Gerstner joined IBM, he said, I was a customer of IBM. And I never understood why you guys were selling me hardware MIPS and nasty gigabytes and terabytes and so forth, and why you were not telling me how can I run American Express in a much better fashion. And the answer was clear. We didn't have any banking skills at that time. So that then brought the question, if you really want to help the client to solve problems, you have to understand the client. You have to go deep in the client. Do we have people who know how a bank functions? Do we have people who know an insurance company or a distribution company functions? The answer was, well, we have a few, but that's not really the core strength of IBM. This then, triggered the Price Waterhouse acquisition, which was happening in the early 2002 or 2003. And even before we were acquiring Price Waterhouse, we knew our biggest gap was the consulting, front-end consulting capability to go into the boardroom, not to the CIO, to the boardroom of the client and become a trusted partner. And this took, I would say, probably 5-6 years to build this new concept of starting to think horizontally. One IBM, we have one partner for a large client who takes care of that client around the world and his global operations and becomes a trusted technology and services partner for that client. There are probably three things which I would see which are to the benefit of IBM. The first one is we probably have, as the first very large enterprise, become global. The IBM company is more global than it has ever been in the past, right? Which means the reliance on certain single markets and so forth is no longer here. If the Americans have a crisis, it's not good for IBM, but it doesn't harm IBM because we can compensate. Now that is always assuming that we will not have a global recession, but we will have recessions in single countries. And much of the revenue today is growth is coming from emerging markets from the IBM. That's the first point. So we're globally positioned. The second thing is, I think we have really succeeded, and I have to say they have, because I'm no longer in IBM, as you know, but we have succeeded in IBM to do this better than many others, to have this horizontal view and be one IBM. And unless the customer buying behavior will fundamentally change, which I don't think so, because this is a complex world and customers would like to have problem solvers, that is an advantage versus any one of our competitors. We're the most integrated company in that sense, with the widest portfolio. And then I think the third point is, in this turmoil from the early 90s, when we were nearly death, this near-death experience creates, at least with the people who were there at that time, and that's maybe about half of the population still has been in IBM in the late 90s. It's got less and less, but but at least those who have been there, who have gone through these tough times, they have understood, even if you are an elephant, if you want to dance, you have to react very quickly. And I think this elephant that Gerstner created with his team around him can still dance today, right? I have just seen now, I'm out of IBM, but I've seen that they published the results yesterday. I've seen that in the revenue, it was okay, but it wasn't outrageous. But you have seen on the profit line, right, which, you know, many companies will explain that they cannot make more profit or grow the profit because the revenue is not growing. In IBM, we have kept our promise. We will grow our earnings per share double-digit every quarter, and we continue to do that. And I think it has to do with the dynamism in management. If you need to stop expenses, you can stop them very quickly. If you need to move and turn your head around to somewhere else, you can do that. If you need to move resources from one place to the other, you can do that. When we had all the resources in each of the single markets, and one market was sour, we couldn't get Swiss or German resources somewhere else. Now we manage our resources globally. We have 70,000 people in India. They do not work in India only, they work for the world. And then when you see maybe there's less demand in the United States, you can use the resources and move them somewhere else. They physically can stay where they are, but the allocation of resources can be done quicker. The same thing with skills. So I think this is a unique, I would call it a unique selling proposition that IBM has, which will make it easier for IBM to go through this thing, but it will be harder.